is very important. Actually, we are the strongest political frame. We are the family, very like-minded countries, and we definitely understand the situation globally the same way, and also the European threat, what we have from the Russian side. And we can say as well that it's not only the political family which is changing the course and also leading the initiatives in Europe and NATO, but also outside globally. And on economical level as well, if you put all this economical power together, we belong to the G9. So we are pretty grateful and also very strong union in that regards. We discussed mainly about how the Europe should look like in the future, to have long-lasting peace, to be strong, to have a strong relations with America and United States, as well how to face the challenges globally in the Middle East, and also what kind of decisions we must make to stop the Russian aggression. So we were talking about increasing pressure on Russia as well to support Ukraine. It is so important to understand that we are not only supporting Ukraine, but we need Ukraine as well as a Europe. It is so important that the NATO and European Union will continue to enlarge. It is so important that in the future Europe there won't be the grey zones or buffer zones between Russia and European Union and NATO, because this is just a green light for Putin for the future to continue the aggression. So we need to change Putin's goal, and in this regard we are in the same positions. As well, we were looking to the situation in the Middle East. We can do more. As well, Europe must be stronger. Transatlantic relations are important for Europe, but also for US. And we have equal leverages on that and the responsibilities as well. And these are the main topics we were discussing today. I would like to give the floor now to High Representative Kaja Kallas. And I'm really, once again, very grateful for this cooperation what we have in the frame of Nordic Baltics. And also, as well, one unofficial topic we discussed was actually Espen has a birthday tomorrow. And after this press conference, we go back our homes, and tomorrow we're going to celebrate Espen's birthday. Thank you.
With a free day. Dear everybody, Margus. Thank you for hosting us here in this wonderful castle. So first on Middle East, there is no swift exit from the standoff in the Strait of Hormuz in sight. And the consequences are negative across the board. The global economy is reeling. Russia is gaining fresh revenue from higher oil prices, and US weapon deliveries to Nordic and Baltic countries face delays. For Europe, freedom of navigation is non-negotiable. EU foreign ministers have already agreed to expand sanctions on Iran over shipping restrictions. Our naval operations can play a greater role in restoring energy and trade flows. Tehran's nuclear and missile programs, as well as its support to terrorist groups in the region and beyond, must be addressed. These issues cannot be put on back burner. Second, turning to the region, the NB8 are strongest supporters of Ukraine. With their backing, Ukraine has pushed back Russia into stalemate, and in doing so, also revolutionized modern warfare. The grim battlefield math shows Russia is losing a record number of soldiers. With the EU's 90 billion loan and the 20 sanctions package, we sent a clear message. We will provide Ukraine what it needs to hold its ground until Putin understands his war leads to nowhere. Ukraine is more important to us than it is to Russia. Russia's war aims keep falling flat, and this is increasingly visible. For the first time in years, Moscow's victory parade is about to take place without any heavy military equipment. This tells a lot about how the war is going for Russia. We also discussed the long-term threat posed by Russia. Hybrid attacks are already off the scale. Too often Moscow sees hybrid warfare as cost-free, but we need to do more to change that calculation. More sanctions, accountability for war crimes, international isolation, and shutting the door to Russian ex-combatants are core elements of our response. Beyond sabotage, disinformation, and cyber, Russia is gearing up its military for a long-term confrontation with the West. Whether Putin dares to test NATO at some point depends entirely on us. Deterrence works if it is credible. Showing weakness only invites aggression. If we want to keep our country safe, we must continue to strengthen European defence readiness. This means surging defence spending, closing capability gaps, and scaling up European defence production. NB8 countries have already taken this message to heart. A more European NATO is long overdue. And finally, let me say that I think we are all here, we all agree on. There can be no return to business as usual with Russia, even after Moscow ends this war in Ukraine. Next month in Cyprus, EU foreign ministers will continue the conversation about our approach to Russia and how best to defend our security interests. So thank you again for hosting us here.
Foreign Minister of Norway, please.
Thank you very much. I just want to first reiterate what both Margus and Kaja has said. Very important meeting. We see the NB8 group as our very closest friends, all allies in NATO. There is now a continued mass of allies between the Barents Sea and the Baltic Sea, and we discussed how we see our neighborhood, how we see Russia, and how we see the need for unity from that perspective. And I think at a difficult time for European security, a difficult time, a challenging time in transatlantic relations, and in the midst of a war in Russia, a war in Ukraine by Russia, and the situation in the Middle East, it's good to come together and feel this group of very aligned countries. So I just want to echo these messages that were already shared. For us, this matters a lot, and I've seen the growth in importance of this group, and I want to thank Estonia for splendid hosting of the meeting.
Foreign Minister of Lithuania, please.
Thank you, dear colleagues, and first of all, dear Margus, thank you for organizing this meeting. Very important timing and a very special place, and very productive discussions. These are the best discussions ever that I have talking with colleagues in this format, by far. And we are open, we are like-minded, and we share the concrete interests, what we are trying to achieve. We are interested in our increased security, in our increased capabilities, in better deterrence, and then also we want to set these trends also for our other NATO allies and for whole Europe. And before Ankara summit, it is really important for us once again to send the message that we have to fulfill what we have pledged in Hague summit. It means increasing our defense spending. It means filling in the gaps and show the willingness and strength to our any potential adversaries. So this is one. What concerns Ukraine, we have also clear interest in ending up this aggression against Ukraine in a just and lasting peace, not only because of the sympathy to Ukraine, but because it is our core interest at stake. And it's our core interest to have a more secure environment, meaning that we should deny Russia the possibility to have the victory. That's why this group of countries is so strong supporter of Ukraine in all the ways, financially, militarily, politically, and in all the others. Once again, this is the trendsetter for our other partner nations and allies. Transatlantic relations are important for us. This is the backbone of the collective defense. That's why we have to be constructive in our way, how we are dealing with the United States, especially in the areas where we, once again, share the interests. So there are a lot of topics for us that we discussed, and I'm happy that we are proceeding further, even closer than we gathered here. Thank you.
Foreign Minister of Latvia, please.
Aita Esti, Aita Margus. It was wonderful to be back in Kuressaare, and we had, of course, very substantial discussions over 2 days. but also because the Nordic Baltic family is probably strongest and closest it has been, and that stems both from not only joint security interests and understanding, but also actually economically and technologically. It's probably the most competitive, innovative and technologically advanced region. So making sure that we sort of leverage also this part of our relationship is ever more important, and our leaders will meet in June, and again the next steps, further steps will be decided there. As foreign ministers, of course, we concentrated on what is in our remit, and that was very much around indeed strengthening our own security, so making sure that national defense investments at national level are there, but also that they are compatible with each other. That defense industry is developed, technology is there, so technological superiority, it all matters. And second pillar, of course, strong NATO, strong Europe, and strong transatlantic relationships, so Canada, US, and then also indeed how the two wars, the crises, are interrelated. That's both support for Ukraine, making sure Ukraine, to whom we have the highest respect and for whom we are the highest supporters in terms of GDP, in terms of total numbers, but also how we can make sure that Europe's future is in Euro-Atlantic region, that we integrate, and that it's Ukraine who is contributing to European security and who will contribute also to the EU and to the wealth and future of European continent in a very direct way. And then the fourth pillar, of course, is weakening Russia. And we, of course, are very cognizant of the fact that Russia wanted to finish the war in 3 days in Ukraine, and now in the 5th year they can't even hold a parade in Moscow properly. So no parade in Kiev, but also no parade in Moscow. And that, indeed, Kaya is right, that shows how the war is going. So we have to, again, trust ourselves and make sure that what we do, applying sanctions, applying pressure, denying Russia money, denying Russia technology and partnerships, that we keep that strong. And this is a group to push all those 4 pillars in action. We'll continue doing so. Thank you.
Okay, and Permanent Secretary of State of Iceland, please.
Thank you. Margus, I would first like to thank you for your warm welcome in this beautiful setting. 2 points on Russia we discussed is to continue or maintain and strengthen the sanctions and continue countering the measures against the shadow fleet. On NATO, we reiterated, of course, our commitment to NATO and on the need also to strengthen the transatlantic bond in preparations for the summit in Ankara in June. Iceland is, of course, a proud member of this strong NB8 family. Thank you, Markus.
Okay, and now we have some time for questions. Before you ask your question, please state your name and your outlet. And for whom it is, yes, thank you.
Hi, Katri Võhma from Delphi. This is a question for Tsahkna and Kallas. The Estonian President Alar Karis told Yle that Europe made a big mistake in the spring of 2022, and let the best possible peace negotiations slip through its fingers. What do the Estonian Foreign Ministry and Kaja Kallas's team think of this kind of statement?
Yes, thank you for the question. I cannot agree with this argument that Europe lost the peace after Russia started aggressive war against Ukraine 22. And I can say very clearly that this is the narrative that since today mainly Russia is waging, because Russia has started the war, and there was a long period of debate, conversations since 2008 actually with Russia. And Russia started the war against Georgia in 2008, and 20% of Georgian territory is still occupied. And then the dialogue went forward. And then Russia started the war against Ukraine in 2014. And then Crimea was occupied. And then debate went further. And then 24th of February, full-scale aggressive war started against Ukraine. So what we saw later was Bucha, all these atrocities. And we saw as well that Putin put on the table in Istanbul the ultimatum, the conditions. He would be ready to have a peace. But it was not only about Ukraine's sovereignty, it was not only about territorial integrity principles and territories of Ukraine, it was as well about us, about NATO, about Baltic states, about European security architecture. And in that conditions, there was no single momentum to have any kind of peace. So Russia started the aggression, and also Russia is not ready to change the goal at all right now. So the only way now to proceed from our side is to support Ukraine as heavily as we can, and also to put more pressure on Russia. Thank you.
Wait.
Yes, I think after this war is over, we have plenty of room to look into who did what and when. But spring 22, the war had just started, and like Margus said, in December or November 21, Russia had presented demands towards Europe, and that also concerned all of our countries, that NATO would go back to their borders of 97, I think, and all this. You know, saying such thing is clearly walking into those Russian traps. And this is really saying that, you know, the Russians always demand the maximum, ask something that has never been theirs, then present threats and ultimatums. And in the end, there will always be people in the West who will offer them something. So let's not walk into that trap. Thank you.
Yeah, Albert Lebi from Õhtuleht. Also a question for Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas. Well, if Europe does not engage in dialogue with Russia, is there not a risk that others will do? So, for example, the United States, and on terms that are unfavorable to Europe, and among others, the Nordic Baltic countries?
Yes, thank you. What we have seen so far is that Russia does not want to engage in any kind of dialogue. We should not humiliate ourselves by being the demandeurs that please, you know, we beg you to talk to us, but we should put them in a position where they actually go from pretending to negotiate to actually negotiate. And that's why we have planned to discuss with the foreign ministers of European Union in Cyprus also what is, you know, the picture that we see, what are the requests that we have for Russia after this war is over, so that we can see that you know, Russia does not pose a threat to any of these countries or Europe as a whole, because that has been the problem. And that's why before talking to them, we should really agree what we want to talk to them about. Thank you.
Hi, Kostya Manenko from Associated Press. The UK Naval Chief announced yesterday the plans to create a joint Nordic and Baltic naval forces. Could you please provide some information how your country plans to contribute to this and when can it be operational?
Who is the question for?
It's for all the ministers.
Maybe you repeat the question.
The UK Naval Chief announced plans that members of JEF forces will create a joint naval force as a complement to NATO. So can you...
Okay, I can say. Yes, indeed, we are. I mean, JEF is, as you know, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, and the Nordic Baltic 8. That is the Joint Expeditionary Force, and that has many components, and one of them is naval. We, Norway, work very closely with the Brits and others in strengthening our maritime domain dominance and surveillance and control in the northern waters, because just east of Norway, we find the Kola Peninsula. That's where Russia stores most of its nuclear weapons, including its nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed strategic submarines. And they will try to access the North Atlantic via the Barents Sea. And in a crisis, we have to have the capability to deny them that. And that's something that we work with also in this group. This is a NATO issue, of course, but also an issue for those who are so close to this region. And I think we're seeing in the conversation we had today, but also many other conversations in the NB8 group, that the Barents Sea, or our part of the Arctic, and the Baltic Sea are both strategically important, and the fact that everything in between is NATO and Nordic Baltic cooperation makes this easier to deal with, and our British friends are key partners in all this.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, Oit Damik from Bloomberg News. My question is for Kaja Kallas. I was wondering what you made of the phone call between Trump and Putin the other day and the outcome of that, and whether the Ukraine peace talks are kind of at a dead end right now, or was there a certain policy shift on Trump's behalf there? Thank you.
Well, the Ukraine peace talks are really stalling. Actually, there is nothing happening there. Of course, when we see these calls between President Trump and President Putin, then always, there are a lot of questions unanswered, considering that Russia is openly praising the heroic battle that Iran is having against America. Does it mean that there is actually also more pressure to Russia because they are helping, Iran to fight war against them? So we would like to see also that pressure, and we didn't see that in that call. Thank you.
Thank you. The press conference has ended. Thank you, Foreign Minister and Permanent Secretary. Thanks.